sitting in one and it just suddenly just went black. Oh no, it was during a local state concert. Greg was sitting in one. Another time, Anton Tibet couldn't bring the second one. Just
Architecture or something. Magic.
two people. That Ryan Sotomayor very he moved that wall by himself in front of me. Yeah.
Interesting.
Check, check. Good morning. Please stand and join me in our call to worship, if you're able. We invite our God to be with us, flowing in and out of us, making us instruments of peace and grace. Weave us into a community showing your justice and mercy, and undergird our courage as we determine to stand together in your love on each step of the journey of our lives. Please be seated. I want to welcome you all, those who are here in person and those who are joining us via our stream. You are in the First Congregational Church of Christ, part of the Central Pacific Conference of the United Church of Christ. We are a community that is open, affirming, and welcoming for all. No matter who you are or where you are on life or in faith's journey, you are most welcome here. Those of you who have not met us, and I encourage you to introduce yourselves after the service, either to myself, to Pastor Derek, or to one of the members. We would love to make you feel welcome. We have notices, mini notices that are available on our website for you to review. I won't go over all of them. There is only one I want to highlight, and that is that the book study group for the book, The Kingdom, Power, and the Glory, American Evangelicals in an Age of Extremism, is continuing its study on Tuesday, via Zoom, and the link is available on our website. That's uccportland.org, and details of all the other upcoming events will be there as well. And now, let's stand and share the peace of God with one another, and then you'll hear the music call on your seat.
Well, good morning. We're now going to go to God in prayer. I think I'm a little loud, Chris. So let's start with a moment of silence, kind of centering ourselves. Give thought to the God that we have come to acknowledge and worship. Give thought to your own life, how you have interacted and lived in it this past week. Think about both what you are proud of and what concerns you. Because we bring all of ourselves to God, not just the good and not just the bad. We bring our whole selves. Holy One, how grateful we are for life, for the joys that come with it and even the sorrows, for the easy times and the challenging times. They are all woven together in what we understand to be our place in this world. So thank you for all of it. Thank you for the moments that we see you in our week in our day, in the moments that remind us we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and in the moments where we find ourselves tripping up over our own frailties, our failed expectations, our curiosities, and our disappointments. We think of those in this community that we interact with at least on a weekly basis, including the young man who just stepped out moments ago. Those that are trying to live the best lives they can, but are so flanked with challenges that most of us can't relate to. We are not facing. Help them in their time of need. Meet them where they are. And in those times when we can be the voice and the hand, the extension of God to them, show us those moments and give us wisdom into how to live into them. On the other side of the world, but we do join all of those across the world who are asking and praying for the same thing, that these wars would stop, that those responsible would be hindered and blocked in their efforts, that peace would come to those regions by the removal of those who choose war over peace. And now we take a moment to reflect on the things that burden our own selves, the concerns we have for ourselves and for others. We take a moment and lift them all up to you now. All these things we bring to you because the one we follow taught his disciples to and teaches us to even today, to rest in you and cast our cares upon you. And the one who also taught us to pray this way: Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory forever. Amen.
Our first reading this morning comes from the book of Exodus, chapter 40. Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle and put up the curtain of the entrance and thus finished his work. Then the cloud of the Lord covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day that it did. So the cloud was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels. Our next reading comes from the 13th chapter of the book of Numbers. The Lord said to Moses, "Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each tribe send one of its leaders through the Negev into the hill country. See what the land is like and whether the people are strong or weak, what kind of land they live in." So they went and explored the land, and after 40 days they returned, and they gave this report. "We went into the land into which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey, but the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large, and the giants live there. We can't attack them because they are stronger than we are." But Caleb silenced the people and said, "We should definitely go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." And from the book of the Levite, Ezra, chapter 9, "But now God has been gracious in leaving us a remnant, by giving us a firm place in the sanctuary, light to our eyes, and relief in the midst of our struggles. God has not forsaken us, and has shown us kindness in granting us new life, to rebuild the house of our God, to repair its ruins, and to give us a wall of protection." And finally, a thought from NHL Hall of Famer Wayne Gretzky. "A good hockey player plays where the puck is. A great hockey player goes to where the puck is going to be." Here ends the readings for the morning.
Did that guy come through here and you left? Okay. Someone remarked to me several times over the last week and a half about my haircut. Not about anything else, just about my haircut. And it reminded me of a story that a barber friend of mine told me last year. A rabbi had gone into his shop, and after his haircut, went to his wallet to get his wallet to pay him. But my friend said, "No thanks, Rabbi. I don't charge the clergy for their haircuts." So the next morning, he found a loaf of Jewish rye bread sitting outside of his doorstep. A couple days later, a Catholic priest came in to get his haircut, and afterwards also got ready to pay the barber, but he said, "No thanks, Father. I don't charge priests for haircuts." So the next morning, he found a bottle of wine outside his door. And it wasn't until the following week when a Congregational pastor came in to get a haircut. But when he got ready to pay, of course, the barber said, "No thanks, Reverend. I don't charge ministers for their haircuts." The next morning, the barber found 15 Congregationalist pastors at his doorstep wanting free haircuts. How true that actually is hard to swallow. Today we're continuing our short series on discerning our church's future. And this time we're going to be focusing on what healthy and unhealthy churches might look like. And as a precursor, let me take you through a conglomerate of actual survey data that suggests what and how, as an aggregate, the ideal or perfect church presents. It has a beautiful space. It has wonderful, moving music. They are overtly welcoming. Every member is active in some aspect of ministry. They have aggressive community outreach that is justice-focused, that funnels thousands of dollars to the local poor and unhoused, and that begins and maintains grassroots ministries. They have vibrant and children's and youth ministries, and at least 3 pastors. They provide pastoral care to everyone in the church. There are specialized ministries such as those for young mothers, singles, seniors, the LGBTQ community, divorcees, Gen Xers, Gen Yers, Gen Zers, self-help and 12-step program groups, emotional support and grief processing groups, Bible studies and book study groups, and racism awareness conversations and training. All under one roof. They are open and affirming, yet decidedly Bible-focused. They have dynamic worship services with many arts expressions, yet prioritize tradition over creativity. A vibrant Sunday school for K through 12th grade. They maintain regular and many adult formation opportunities and have plenty of staff to oversee them. There is no conflict or congregational disagreements at all. They are located in the suburbs, yet boast of urban awareness and diversity. They have a huge volunteer corps. They offer several mission groups and trips. They regularly include personal testimonials and stories in the service, yet the service is only 1 hour long. Everyone tithes 10% of their gross, not net, gross income to their church and give additionally to various mission endeavors. And they have a $50 million endowment. That is the perfect church, according to an aggregate of research. And those are the theoretical traits and characteristics of that ideal, thriving, quintessential congregation in America. It's also a pretty ridiculous postulate. Hartford Institution for Religious Research, which is a well-respected source of statistics and data on the 21st century American church experience, presents a pretty dire situation regarding U.S. religious participation and church-going, etc. More Protestant mainline churches are closing than any other category of religious community or gathering. This is especially true of the city of Boston and the immediate surrounding towns and cities in New England, eclipsed only by, anyone want to guess? The Pacific Northwest. That's right where we are, containing the highest non-religious or secular, as it is described in these studies, population, the highest one in the U.S., rivaled only by Western European and its under 40 aged population. But there are glimmers of hope, as other research shows how churches have beaten those odds and defied those trends. One of the interesting data points sifted out from the reams of research results that these studies produced was the strong notion that in a post-pandemic church, both clergy and the churches that they serve are more likely to feel like they are in a healthy place or on a healthy track if they are intentionally adapting to the cultural shifts and new social norms that are happening and evolving around them. This dynamic inevitably includes the way religion and spiritual life is practiced in those communities of faith, with significant correlations emerging between average clergy health and positive congregational dynamics. They are correlated, such as the willingness to change, overall vitality, and whether the church was thriving post-pandemic by many different measurable rubrics. But we will be talking more about how pastors figure all into that next week. In terms of healthy churches, one rather glaring discovery through many interviews and surveys of tentative first-time churchgoers was the attitude among those who are either unchurched or unfamiliar with the church life and experience, but are personally entertaining the option of finding one to attend. And here's what they discovered about that group in the order of their considerations. When those that I just described are just beginning to think about going to a church, perhaps for many of them for the very first time in their lives, or in a long time since they were children, they say that what they're paying attention to most is the music. What that's going to be like. The next thing they're looking for or thinking about before they go to church is how socially accepting the church is going to be. Whether their services are at a convenient day and time. And if they have specific ministries for children and youth, or ones that are age-specific, mission-related, outreach-focused, or ones that kind of engage certain social issues that they feel like are necessary. Once they decide to go to a church that they've selected and actually attend worship for the first time, the things that population remember the most are if they felt welcomed and acknowledged as being new, or were they left alone. They also report remembering the music. Not the preaching, by the way, and I'm rather suspicious of that particular finding, just for the record. But based on those first impressions, if they decide to make a second visit, their radar is going to be up for different things the second time around. And they are these: whether someone recognizes them and overtly welcomes them again as a returning visitor, whether they feel an emotional connection to the church experience and its values, and, this time, they're also looking for whether or not there was a challenging message that they actually remembered after they left. Now, if the congregation passes muster for all of these expectations, and that new visitor dares a third visit to the same church, they are now paying attention to yet another set of qualifiers, according to this research. Whether they connect with the church's mission, if they can easily see a place for them to fit in, and if there's a consistency of how they experience the congregation members that they encounter themselves. In terms of welcome, in terms of a sense of familiarity, and dare I say, family. That's how an outside first-time visitor is determining whether we are, if not the perfect church, certainly whether we're the right church for them, and whether personal investment and involvement on their part might be on the horizon. Last week we talked about the cloud of God's presence, which came to Israel and rested over the tabernacle where they worshiped in the desert. But it was also in the midst of their community every single day. And the phrase, "I will be among you," was something God said many times during that journey. The cloud was also there to reinforce the idea that God was leading them. And they were instructed to prepare to live and act through two lenses: planting and uprooting, planting and moving. When the cloud was stationary, we talked about this last week, they unpacked their tents, they set up camp, and the charge from God in those times was to build community, to invest in each other. But when the cloud had begun moving, it was time to pull up those roots, pack up their tents, and start going on a new journey, even though they didn't know where they were going. They had to gear up for change. And their investment now was about their future destination, their destiny, if you will. And they were called to verge into the unknown with courage to embrace new and unfamiliar things. And this is where I want to highlight Moses' instruction in the book of Numbers. Go and see what the land is like, God said. They now had the responsibility to explore new possibilities in order for their transition out of Egypt to succeed in its fullest sense. They were not just being led out of somewhere, they were being led toward somewhere and something new. They weren't to debate whether to go forward, but to discern how and with what strategy they were going to. And the few times that they did debate whether to go or outright refused, well, things didn't go all that well. And that's what the story in the book of Numbers is about. Their assignment was to assess their options, to discern their strengths as well as their challenges, and determine what the cost would be in order to move forward. They were to discern what exactly the cloud had led them to and find where God's blessing was in that new place. And one thing was clear in those first generation out of Egypt stories, which is overwhelmingly true today. Their tasks were ones of collaboration, and they leaned heavily on lay initiative. And I'm going to carry the torch with our leadership here when I say that living into your future will require the same thing in spades. Gone are the days when pastors and paid staff do all or even most of the work of ministry. And we've begun to experience this in new and, in some cases, painful ways here. But we also know that volunteerism took a big hit during and because of the pandemic and has not yet recovered fully from that. The Big C church in Western culture is going to have to figure out how to undo that dynamic in order to live effectively into its future. And we will have to do the same if we are to both survive and eventually thrive as a faith community. Paul told the church at Ephesus that pastors are given to the church to build it up, and that the people are to do the work of ministry. To prepare God's people, he said, for works of service, so that the whole body of Christ may be built up and grow and build itself up in love as each part does its work. The members' ownership of a church's future is vital. It is requisite for its success. And that is abundantly true here at First Church. But there's another lesson embedded within this story in the 13th chapter of Numbers. Giving thought to your future can be daunting, especially when both your recent history and the appearance of what is in front of you, what you're about to walk into, are fraught with anxiety and what looks like insurmountable challenges. Just like the 10 of the 12 spies that went into Canaan had remarked when they returned. It was the other two, Joshua and Caleb, who silenced the people before Moses and said, "That is not so. We should go up and take possession of the land, and we can certainly do it," they said. Why did they say that? Where did that confidence come from? Why were they so certain God would be with them and give them victory? Well, they said so. They said why. For God has brought us here. In other words, why would God extend all of that effort, including God's reputation, in order to lead them to their demise? God told them that they were sojourners with God, that God was walking and traveling that journey with them. And God will do the same with us, no matter what obstacles are in front of us. And it's going to be vital that we hold on to that promise if we're going to move forward as a church in a new chapter of our life. Now, our last reading provided a wonderful promise in that regard that at the time was given to Israel as they were preparing to leave Babylon after their 70-year captivity. But it's just as relevant today to us. I want to repeat it. But now God has been gracious in leaving us a remnant, Ezra said, by giving us a firm place in the sanctuary, light to our eyes, relief in the midst of our struggles. God has not forsaken us, but has shown us kindness in granting us new life, to rebuild the house of our God, to repair its ruins, and to give us a wall of protection. Now, as I begin to close, and to show a stark contrast for the sake of reference, allow me to offer a list of characteristics of a dying church. And just for the record, this is not an ironic or humorous list. This is, in fact, what dying churches actually look like. They value a church's history over its mission. They consider the right to talk about each other in other words, to gossip, more important than the right to talk about God with each other. Tradition is more highly valued than compassion. Its members relate to, cling to, and identify themselves by their positions of power in the church, rather than by their spiritual growth. The concept of spirituality is relegated to individual, private pursuits and is considered purely a personal matter, rather than a collective one. While tradition, their own comfort, and a sense of familiarity are the primary targets of church worship and practice. They regularly indulge in obsession over money. They express an overwhelming need to often rehearse the good old days of church life, when things were different, with the unrealistic conviction that that was the best of who they are, and that they must do everything to try to get back to that place and that dynamic. They use the organizing and updating of church documents, such as the bylaws and policy manuals, for instance, as a way of feeling like they're accomplishing something productive because nothing else is going on. They exhibit a complete inability to let go of prior chapters or definitions of church success, despite the fact that they are no longer living in or experiencing them. And finally, they embody an almost dissociative disconnect from the reality of their present circumstances, yet seem clueless what is meant when that fact is pointed out to them. The characteristics of a dying church. So when we revisit this series in the fall, the objectives for our conversations, as well as a few all-church gatherings that we will schedule and promote, will be to determine 4 primary things: who we are, where we are, where God wants us to be, and what we need to do to get there. All of these call out our future and our destiny, and to that end, I want to emphasize the absolute vital nature of these 3 notions. The need to tell ourselves the truth about our situation, whatever that is. The responsibility of the whole community, to discern and then realize its future. And the obligation to imagine new ministry and new ways of implementing it. Next Sunday, as a natural follow-up to today's theme, the perfect church, we'll be turning the tables a bit with a fictional yet eye-opening look at the perfect pastor. We'll have a bit of fun with that one, and it will also include, as a part of our service, a very quick trip down to Fellowship Hall for a very fun yet informing exercise about how we just might view that role differently, and what its intersection with committee and ministry teams are, and how we view that differently as well. So for the rest of our time today, I'd like to bring your attention to our prompting question as I open the floor to your ideas and your comments and questions. What prospects of changing things about church life, what ones excite you, and what ones frighten you? Give it a thought, and the floor is yours.
I think it's the same thing. The the prospect of the changing things that excites me is connecting with the community and its problems and working together to try to find, I don't believe there are solutions, but find things of making it, ways of making it better. And what frightens me is that exercise is very scary because it is such huge problems out there that don't have easy solutions, if there's solutions at all. But I feel the excitement that we have an opportunity to engage with it.
Thank you. Someone else want to weigh in? Church life. You're far too an opinionated of a group to not have anything to say about this. That much I know. If you're on the outer skirt, if you can pull in so that we can keep the conversation tight here. Yeah.
I think what frightens me is that the boat has been rocking in stormy waters for a long time. And I think that not in all ways we've expressed that. Some of us have, some of us haven't. But the rocky waters have made the uncertainty of, oh, what's next? Or is the storm going to keep going? It's just a hard thing to swallow. There's excitement in new, and it's hard to let go of. I thought I was done. It's hard to let go of what was, what traditions were, but I clearly know that there are some of us that fear these aspects when they change, the boat will tip over.
Let's use the other one, please. We'll wait till this is a weekly thing. Okay, so that's going to be my first thing. We take part of our $50 million endowment and get microphones that work without wondering.
I'm Leslie, and I have never felt more supported in a church than I have here. And maybe it's just because I stick my head in the sand, but I'm not worried. I'm just not worried.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
These are not a problem to me. What's a problem to me is where I fit in. That's what I'm thinking, especially the couple of months ahead. This is my family. I could not be here last week. I actually had a medical appointment, and I missed being here. I need this church.
You can send it right over there.
Hi, my name is Sydney. Things that are exciting for me is everything. The idea of being able to create the community that I'm hearing about in other people's testimonies, that's all exciting. I appreciate you saying that we need to be honest with ourselves and honest with the community. And that's what frightens me, is facing the realities and making sure that we understand the implications of either working on it or not working on it. And that's the only thing that scares me. But I think that in the end we would be able to come together and figure it out.
So Sydney would fall into that category of someone who thought about coming here, then came again, and then came again and again. And we're going to be talking at some point this week. She's going to be interviewing me about something, but I'm going to interview her. She doesn't know this, but I'm going to be asking her, based on those measurable rubrics, how did we pan out? What was the welcome like? Was it consistent the next week? Was it consistent the next week? Where do you feel you fit in? Did we create an environment that gave you the option of thinking about where you fit in? Or didn't it? And we have other people who are either here for the first time, I won't point you out, or haven't been here for a while. And those questions, probably some version of them, roll around in their heads when they're thinking about tomorrow morning, whether they're going to come back next Sunday. Other thoughts?
I've been questioning saying this. I was very negatively impacted by Roe versus Wade being just taken away. And the last Sundays, we've been saying, Our Father, who art in heaven. And this church for years said, Our Mother, Father. And I really appreciated that, and I miss it. I'm being honest right now, and I wasn't going to be honest, but I'm being honest.
Okay, that's totally fine. That would be my fault. We went 7 weeks without saying that prayer intentionally because we were learning about it line by line. But that's an easy fix. I believe in God the Mother. Wait till Mother's Day. I'll be really talking about that then.
Well, I'm Kristen Knapp. I'm one of those people who has come back a little bit recently, primarily because the church has been very welcoming of the exhibit that I've put downstairs in the chapel for the Portland Youth Philharmonic. But my family has history with this church. I am a Congregationalist to my core, and for me it's very important that the church remain connected to the UCC. That's absolutely paramount, and I think that the traditions and the driving force of the UCC, the idea that God is still speaking, is very central to whatever the church decides to do. But for me personally, as it's been true my whole life, I find it very hard to be in a Christian church. It's not my place, even if we can say Mother, Father, God, which I did miss, and I've been here 2 weeks, and I was like, really? Have we dropped that already? That was very hard for me. And if it doesn't come automatically to be inclusive, I think that's a problem. And I think we just have to keep discerning what it means to be inclusive and what words and what actions we take that express that. So I don't expect that I will become a member, an active member, but I do expect that I'm going to continue to be proud of this church and happy with the path it takes.
Thank you for sharing. I wasn't born into the UCC or as a Congregationalist, which is mostly why I still pay for my haircuts. Anyone else like to share something? Yeah, sure. Michael, can you send us back?
I volunteer with Planned Parenthood. I've been with them for about 4 years now. And I entered seminary last year, and I realized what a red flag that was for a lot of the communities that I worked with, and I slowly talked about it. And the amount of people who want to come back to church but don't know how is incredibly high. And talking to them where they are, I realize that I have built a trust because they've known me longer as a Planned Parenthood person than as somebody who is involved in Christianity. And I have a lot of people asking questions and talking and wanting to know how to get back, but not knowing how to.
One of the biggest mistakes that churches make when they're trying to, I'm going to adopt the term, but we all know it's very different for us in the UCC, but when we're trying to, quote, evangelize, when we're trying to reach out to people that aren't here to get them, one of the biggest mistakes churches make is they try to get them in here, and then they realize, oh, now we got to figure out how to minister to them. instead of reversing that. It's like opening a restaurant without a chef, without tables and chairs, and without food deliveries. And then go, oh, now they're here. Now we've got to order some food, and now we've got to get somebody to cook it. It's a ridiculous prospect. But that's one of the biggest mistakes that churches who are trying to be faithful by reaching out do so in the wrong order. And that's about strategy. We have to know what we're offering and what we have to offer is best suited for before we start advertising that we have it to offer. And that's what the fall is going to be about. We're just kind of setting the stage to stew on these things over the summer before we have those conversations. Yes, Karen?
What you just said was what I was going to say, which is I think that we have lots of things to involve people in that we don't recognize particularly as central to who we are as a community. I think we recognize the music because it's part of worship. I think we don't necessarily recognize the art part of our ministry because it's not part of worship. I think we recognize maybe our book groups, but maybe not. Maybe our fellowship groups, and maybe not, as really part of our ministry. When I first came, when I first got involved, I didn't know what to invite people to. I still don't, in lots of ways.
Sure. One last, if there's anyone else. Yes?
Yep, I'm one of those new guys. I bring you greetings from St. Louis, Missouri, and the Gateway Open and Affirming Coalition. That, front and center, the rainbow, and then aside at the trans flag, are a symbol, a beacon that I looked for when I came here for work for this week to find a church. And that was the first thing that popped up. So what excites me is you're there. What I challenge you to do, and might frighten you, is to look at a model like we have in the Midwest, which sounds weird, right? You guys are all progressives. You're way ahead, right? We formed a coalition of all the UCC churches in the Midwest that are open and affirming. And then what we do is we offer a pathway for other churches to join on board, to welcome everyone in the community. But you putting that out there up front on your website, you're on the path, you're doing it. And I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Greg, and welcome. Did you put your hand up? Please do. Yeah.
Well, I'm a part-time. I'm here occasionally because I have another church that I frequent a little bit more, and I think it is important to have that symbolism of showing that you're open and affirming. But ultimately, it doesn't matter if you can't get those folks in the door and keep them here, because as a queer person and as a non-binary person, what I look for when I go to a new church, granted I've been here many times and I have a great community here, what I look for is other people in my community. And so if you can't keep those folks here, it doesn't matter to have the symbolism, because, you know, at the end of the day, you can have the symbolism all you want, but if those folks aren't coming and staying, then I'm less inclined to come and stay.
Thank you for sharing. And thank all of you for sharing. We will pick this up next week.
And now we have an opportunity to give. We have a very diverse community of activities and opportunities, and an opportunity to give of the largesse and generosity that's been given to us. Open your hearts. Thank you.
Please pray with me. Holy One, change is all around us, at home, at work, at school, in our neighborhoods, in our families, in our cities. All of us at one time or another struggle with what change does to us and where it leaves us. It's easy to succumb to the anxiety of feeling uprooted, confused, even all alone. Remind us in those times, dear God, to lean on and lean into you as our rock, our fortress, our firm undergirding and protection. Help us navigate the changes that are uncomfortable. Instill in us peace while feeling out of control. And give us the grace and tenacity to endure the changes imposed on us and around us, whether by society or politics or the environment, or even by our own history, the ones that cause us anxiety. And show us how to change the circumstances around us and be a part of those changes when that is what the moment calls for. Amen. In Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay on the value and necessity of pursuing one's passions and thereby one's destiny, he said this: "Don't go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." So go from this place in peace and be prepared to leave a trail. Amen.
jazz, actually, the jazz band is playing next Sunday, and then the one after